What do you think the hardest part has been of you growing this business to where it's at, but being a woman?
Wow. I didn't know anybody noticed.
Welcome back to Success Unleashed. Today we've got another special guest with us, Carrie Kalish. She is the founder and CEO of A+ Garage Doors here in Salt Lake City, Utah. Last year generated over $36 million in revenue, currently expanding into different states. And then I know you've got some other things working behind the scenes. But Carrie, I wanted to welcome you to the show.
Thank you. It's just great to be here.
I appreciate you being here. One of the things that I really geek out on is hearing people's stories. Like, how did you get there, right? There's a lot of contractors that are, doing under 500,000 a year, and they don't ever see 7 or even 8 figures as being something that's possible, right? But tell me a little bit about you. How did you get started in this business?
Yeah, so I was actually a mortgage broker. So that's how I got started. No, I was a mortgage broker, and I was doing very well. And I was dating a guy that worked at a garage door company. So he kept coming to me and asking me if I would open a garage door company for him. But I just didn't want that commitment going on, and I didn't have the time, the effort. I was really deep in doing the mortgages. It was working really well for me. This was 2005 when mortgages worked really well.
Yeah.
So after asking me for a couple months, he finally came back and said, look, if you open a business, you'll own it, and your kids can work there someday. So I was like, oh, I do want that, because I was a single mom with 3 kids, and I wanted to be able to provide them with a job that they could learn some work ethics. And so I opened the business thinking, this is going to be easy. He's going to manage the whole thing. I'm not going to have to do anything. That was really good for about a month. And then it was like, hey, I need you to do this. Hey, I need you to do that. And so it slowly kind of just dragged me back in. And then around 2006, 2007, that's when the industry just was crashing. And so it was good timing, because as I'm spinning my wheels on mortgages and I can't get anything to close, and Lehman Brothers is now going bankrupt and all these other banks are going bankrupt, then I was able to transition over into garage doors.
Wow. Now, that's a very Reader's Digest version, and we're gonna unpack that a little bit. But let me ask you a little bit more about that whole process of wanting to get started, right? There's some tradespeople they grew up in the business. It was their parents, or when they were 16, they got a job, digging ditches like my son did. Yeah. But there's some of them that come from other industries and other places. Yes, you had somebody kind of poking at you and trying to get you to do it, but what was it that actually made you say, hey, this could be a really good opportunity? So that is a great question, and I've reflected on that a lot. It would be when one of my friends that was actually doing my marketing at the time, he told me, you got to go to Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. And I was like, why? And he's like, so you can, run your business, or you learn how to run your business. And I was like, wait, I just work for a garage door company that my name's on the title, And so I just trusted him. I went to Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. It's like a 13-week program. And it was then that it just opened my eyes as to you've got a company here and nobody's running it. So this was clear back in 2013. So I was working in the business for a long time before I realized I even had a company. Wow.
It was just making ends meet. Just like everyone out there, I was just like, what? This isn't a company. This is just how we put food on the table.
That's interesting. A lot of people see their business that way, whether they're doing, $1 million, whether they're doing 250,000, they see it as hey, I'm exchanging that time for money equation, right? Now, when you started off, did you guys have an office? Were you working out of a garage? What was that whole thing like? Yeah,
so I had a house. So I was working out of a bedroom in my house, and my small, I would say small 2-car garage, but I don't think 2 cars even fit in there. That was shared with the garage door parts, and then one of my rooms I turned into an office.
Wow. And how long did that last?
That lasted till about 2015, when I was like, we need something else. I can't have people coming to my house or being in my space. And so then we had kind of a big lot. So my husband then built a shop in the back. And that was so beautiful. I was ecstatic about that.
You finally had that separation. Now, I'm going to kind of go back and forth, right? Because I think it's really interesting. not just your story, but like the parallels between everybody else's story, right? What would you say to somebody who like right now is like, I need an office, but they can't really afford an office? What would you tell them?
I would say if you can't afford an office, then it's like there's a lot of things you can still do from your house. I mean, a lot of people do a lot of things remote. It's much easier now to do remote than it was back when I was running it out of my house. So I would say, look, you kind of got to go lean in the very beginning. You got to do wear a lot of hats. And so sometimes we hold off on the office and utilize the space that you have. It's, until you see, like, we had 18 people coming to my house, and we have like 6 or 7 trucks driving in into our community, and I'm like, oh, my neighbors are going to kill me. I got to get out of here. So then we made the transition to move.
Yeah. So that's a big deal, right? You had 18 employees before you got some office space.
Well, yeah, I mean, legit moved out. Yeah. But it was around there. Like, my numbers are going to be a little skewed. But yeah, we were definitely under 20 for sure. So.
But again, it's really important to understand that. Like, if you're listening or you're watching right now, like there's a point in your business that you're going to have to make that jump and the transition, and it is an investment, right? Yeah. But understand that it's something that like has to be done versus wants to be done.
Exactly. Yeah, it was hard for me to like actually make that move, because when we did make the move, it's like, God, we're finally making enough money that I feel like I'm not going without a paycheck. But it wasn't enough money that I can just like throw it away and go buy a boat. So it was really one of those decisions that was not easy, because I know it's something I didn't want to pay for. So I'm like, we're very capable of still squeezing in here, but to me it reminds me of the whole, you put a goldfish in a bowl and it'll grow to that size. And so when I bought this. Our location in Sandy, so we moved from Harriman, Utah to Sandy, Utah. And when I got that location, we were walking through, and the people I was walking through with, some of my teammates there, they were like, this is huge. We're never going to fit in this space. And within it was a couple of months of being in there, they're like, oh, we've really filled it. And then pretty soon they're like, hey, we're outgrowing it. And so every time we buy bigger, we just fill the space, and you just grow to that space. So, but I think you got to really make sure that you're prepared to do it. Like, be smart about it.
I know we're going to circle back to that, because I think that's a key that a lot of people kind of miss out on. I want to go back to kind of the beginning. What would you say like your biggest lesson was in the first 5 years of business?
Oh my gosh. Hold on, that's a long time ago. I think my biggest lesson is it would have to be like delegating. That was really hard to trust someone to do it and have the care and the dedication that you have. And then when they do it, they're always going to do it their way. So that was really one of my challenges, and something that I still work on every day.
Yeah. Who was your first hire?
My first hire was my sister-in-law. So
and
it was
what
about
role
a month.
Was that?
About a month in, when my boyfriend called me going, we need somebody to answer phones because I'm so busy. So my sister-in-law, I called her and I was like, hey, do you want to answer phones from your house? So she was my first hire. My first, I would say, full-time, a boots-on-the-ground employee was my nephew. Parker Kelch. He was 16 years old.
And he's still with the company.
He's still with the company. He's now the COO, and he is so amazing at what he's done. And what he's grown into, it literally gives me chills, because I've watched him from, 16 into where he is and running what he runs. It's a very big operation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can attest to that, because I have been to their office, and it's beautiful and a very well-run operation. Looking back, yes, your first part-time hire was a call taker. Your second was your nephew, who, if I assume right, was kind of jack of all trades, kind of just filling holes here and there. Looking back, what do you think your recommendation would be for a company that's growing to be their first hire?
Somebody that you can lean on. Somebody that is coachable. It's very important. I mean, I would rather have somebody that came in that's a straight C student that's actually coachable and you can train them into management than have like a professor that comes in and they already know everything. So when you're small, you gotta you can't really afford somebody that's very high caliber. So you got to get somebody that's very coachable.
That's interesting that you say not necessarily a role, but more who are they on the inside, right? Their traits.
Absolutely. Culture is so important. And it starts just from day one.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so you get to this point where you guys are, exchanging time for money, and you're doing that for a few years, like most contractors do. You go to this program, you learn how to properly run a business, and then what changed?
I would say that one of the biggest things that changed is that I started stepping up and realizing that this company needs a leader, somebody to guide it and to, show it the way and to dream bigger. And so I think it was what changed is me.
Wow, that's huge. Now, you were already a successful business owner, right? You were in the mortgage space and then you jumped into garage doors. How important do you think this concept of leadership is? Because for us, that's the first concept that we teach. That is the foundation of everything else. I don't care if it's marketing, sales, operations, finance teams. It's leadership that's the foundation. So what makes you say that leadership is the most important thing?
Well, what makes me say that? Mm-hmm. I would say that if you're not able to be able to lead a team, all you have is you. And you only grow as big as you are. And so what you can do. So I've seen a lot of operators out there, and they're the ones doing it all. So they're in the field, and then they're coming home, and then they're doing their paperwork, and then they're on the phones. And it's like you can't grow any bigger. So you've got to now turn into a leader. And so if you're not able to lead your team, how are you going to grow? So, I think it's very important if you're going to grow. If you're just going to provide for your family and make ends meet, then just keep doing you.
That's a great way to say it. And I think this is where a lot of guys get stuck, right? It's like, hey, it's me. We call it chucking a truck, right? It's just you and your truck, and you ask for jobs when you need jobs, and you do jobs when you got to do jobs. And, you're going to take time off, you take time off. And it's just kind of, I call it a lifestyle business, right? It provides for you, provides for your family. You get to take a vacation a year, so be it. But true, life-changing business that creates that freedom that you want, it requires a different version of you, right? Now, how long do you think it took you, and I already know what you're going to say, but how long do you think it took you to finally figure out what it meant to truly be a leader?
Well, I'm still figuring that out.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that.
I know.
But you're at a level that, from my perspective, you guys are pushing 40 million. You've figured some things out, right? And I've been to your office. I've talked to your staff. I've seen your operation. You're not running. In fact, you guys don't know this, but I told her, she's the physical manifestation of everything that I teach, everything, right? Because the way her office is set up, the way things run, the way that they problem solve, everything, you are that. So I'm not saying that, to toot your horn, but maybe I will toot your horn. You're that physical manifestation, right? But it took a while for you to get there, right? How long do you think it took for you to figure out, at least to the level that you're at as a leader?
So I'd say after I did that course, because that's kind of 2013, that's when I my aha opened that it's I've got a company here. Mm-hmm. So I'd say for starting from then, it was probably 4 years of me just keep working at it and failing and upsetting people. And not that I haven't stopped upsetting people, but just before I was oh, you know what, this actually has a good flow. And it really did come down to getting some strong people. By then I could afford some strong, qualified individuals in the company that stood behind me and believed in what I was doing.
That's interesting that you say that. From my perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, from my perspective, you will never be able to lead somebody that you're not capable of leading, right? So some people are I need to bring in somebody that's better at or better than, and they try and bring them on and nothing works out. Why do you think that is?
Well, when you have somebody that already knows everything, right? They're just not coachable, and so they're not able to like join into your culture and be part of what you've created. They want to kind of create their own thing. So I believe that's why it's kind of a struggle when you bring somebody that's like so sophisticated. It's like, well, it's either you merge your culture into theirs, but they're not merging into yours.
Yeah. So it's very important then to have that culture set up and built. And then now you're seeing, hey, are they a match for what we've built? Not can we like assimilate them into there?
100%. Yeah, you definitely want to find somebody that molds with you.
Okay, so of all the things that you do, where does culture fit on the scale? High priority, low priority, somewhere in the middle?
The highest priority.
Why?
Well, if you don't set up your culture, like your culture exists no matter what. So a lot of people that I've talked to, they're like, well, I don't know what my culture is. It's like, we have a culture. If you don't know what it is, look in the mirror, because that's exactly what it is. So your culture exists no matter what. And if you've got a culture where it's like you're not really honest, or you don't care for your customers, or you just kind of trying to get through the day, that's exactly what your culture is. So to me, it's the highest priority because it sets a precedence for every single day, every single employee that comes in, every customer. It just sets a precedence for all of it.
I love that, because I also believe, again, culture is the foundation of what you do, right? Mm-hmm. Culture's a magnet. It's going to attract the right people. It's going to repel the wrong ones. Hey, contractors, let me tell you something real quick. A lot of contractors struggle because the business they created has them feeling stuck. If you feel trapped inside of your contracting business, still wearing all the hats and can't seem to get ahead, well, we'd love to help. We're offering a free planning session where we'll show you how to remove the chaos from your business and grow predictably. If you're interested, you need to go to our website, www.americancontractornetwork.com, and book your free session now. All right, that's it for me. Let's get back to the show. How long was it after this Goldman Sachs? Was it, after that 4-year, leadership journey, if you will? Like, how long was it before you're like, I gotta fix this culture that we've subconsciously created here?
Almost immediate. During the 4 years. I say during the 4 years, that's when I felt like I worked really hard on fixing the culture and getting it to something that I could be proud of.
Yeah, I love that. How many employees do you guys have right now?
Around 140.
140. Okay. How often do you think that a leadership team should meet together?
Well, we meet once a month. So obviously I feel like once a month, but it's not just as the whole entire team, we meet once a month. But I would say my team within teams, they're meeting every day, definitely every week. So I think it's important that you meet every week with like your leaderships, but I wouldn't go too long. I mean, sometimes you're meeting multiple times a week. I would say for everybody to gather, then that takes a lot from a company.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that needs to happen now when I say that, we actually have like smaller meetings where it's like 75% of them meet for an hour. So I guess we're probably meeting 2 to 3 times a month, but all of them together once a month.
So your entire team once a month, but then you have broken up into smaller meetings. Now, there's a lot of people out there, especially those who grew up, with mud on their boots, hate meetings, right? They hate structure. They hate like trying to tell people what to do. What would you tell them as far as the importance of good meetings?
Well, first of all, I would tell them that is their culture. So that is the culture of your company right there. And then I would say, like, how are you going to give them guidance? How does everybody know what your dream and your vision is? How do they know what everybody's, like, if everyone's rowing in the same direction, you get much farther, you accomplish much more. How do they know what that is if you're not meeting with them and telling them? And I guess some people would say, like, trust me, there's been a time where I'm like, okay, we have too many meetings going on. We've got to just bring it back in. And then there's been times where we didn't have enough meetings going on. I could tell you when we have too many meetings going on, it's much easier to bring it back than when you have no meetings going on and then there's this confusion of what are we all doing? Why is this person doing the same thing this person's doing? So I would say it's one of the foundations you want to really get a handle on.
Yeah, I love that. from your perspective, what would you say the like top 2 or 3 reasons are to have the frequency of meetings that you have?
Well, I mean, again, you want to get everyone on the same page. So that's very important. And you also want to get like some feedback and check in with them and see how they're doing and how they're feeling about something and addressing problems. If you just think the problem's going to go away and you just kind of bury it, I can just tell you that is not very healthy for a company.
No, not at all. Now, you went through this period of time where hustle and grind mode, I call it, right? Mm-hmm. Time for dollars. Like you went through that for, 7, 8 years, and then you figured something out. 4 years of, okay, we're starting to put the foundation in place, and then boom, things really started to take off, right? What would you say was your biggest fear as you were growing?
My biggest fear as we're growing is, as we're growing, you're hiring more people. So you're hiring more people on. My biggest fear is letting them go, like disappointing them. So, I mean, they're risking coming to you. Although I know that some business owners would disagree. They're like, it's a paycheck. But they are. They're risking a lot. They're trusting a lot coming over and joining your team. And so I guess that was my biggest fear, would be letting them down or having to downsize or make promises to people that you can't, be true on.
Yeah, I like that. Now, from your perspective, hiring from within or hiring from the outside, which do you prefer?
Oh, it just depends on the position. If you kind of know that somebody already knows the position and you can teach them, and they're coachable, then yeah, hire within. But there's some positions where you just don't have the talent that you need in the company, and you've got to go out and find it.
What are some of those positions that you would say?
Marketing, for one, was mine, but we did that for a long time in-house, and then we hired outside. So,
yeah.
But I mean, when I say in-house, I mean I would have marketing agents do it.
Yeah.
So.
And then you had to go.
And then my CFO, that was one of my big steps. Like once I hired a CFO, he was the one that was like, I couldn't afford what I could afford. So I just had no idea I could afford him. And we just were blessed to get a great CFO to come on and get us set up for success.
Yeah, I love that. Now, your business, like on average, I know you're at 140 employees and you may not know the exact numbers. On average, how long do your employees stay with you?
Well, we just did our award ceremony, and so we had some tenures, and we had a couple, like a handful of 5s, a couple 10s. So on average, I mean, you're looking at probably 5 years, but we really work on maintaining more than that. Retention is very important to me, especially because of how important it is to get the culture. Once you find that person, I don't want to let them go. And the biggest, you want them to still stay part of your team.
That's huge, because on average, now the person stays with their company for 12 to 18 months on average, right? And you got to think like back when we were kids, right? Dating ourselves, like what did your parents teach you? Go to college, get a job, and then you stick it out until you retire. There was no like bouncing around, jumping around. And obviously a lot of things have changed. I think one of the big things, and you already brought this up, the big thing that's changed is people aren't just after a paycheck. They're after a purpose too, right? A purpose greater than their own. Can they contribute? Can they be part of something bigger, right? Is there a cause that they're behind? And if they don't find that, they're going to go find it somewhere else, right? Yes, dollars mean something, but they don't mean everything anymore. What would you say that you guys have been able to do to extend the lifespan, if you will, of an employee?
So right now, I'm really excited because we are able to give them shares in the company.
Oh, wow.
So then they're right there with the owner.
Yeah.
So they've got
good.
shares. Yeah. So they got some shares just like I do, and so that's really fun for me. It's been super exciting, and I feel like that is it checks a lot of boxes for these people that are just giving it their all, and it's like, hey, why do I stay with this? Well, now they have the reason, they have the why.
That's huge. I love that. Now, if you were looking back at your business, the beginning years, right? Because again, I think it's really glamorous of where you're at right now. People don't understand the hard work over the last, 20 plus years to just like every day show up. Like, what would you say were the 2 to 3 keys to your success?
People and processes.
Ooh. Now, I know the answer behind that. What do you think comes first, people or processes?
Oh my gosh. I would have to think on that for a minute. I actually feel like processes really should come first. That's not the way I did it, but I really feel like that's when we started to make some moves and started to grow is we really got our processes down, and then you can fill the people in. Yeah.
It's interesting, right? Like there's an old saying that says what's duplicatable is scalable. And people want to scale, but they don't have a system that's duplicatable. Who's answering the phone? And it's like 4 people. Okay, so where are we keeping track of the invoices? 3 places, right? And it's like, okay, who are we calling for this emergency? 10 people, and there's no organization to it. And so it just becomes chaotic.
Absolutely.
And I think you're right. Like sometimes you learn through the school of hard knocks, right? You're like, okay, that was kind of dumb. Let's bring it back and do something. So I like that you said, hey, I didn't do it that way, but if I was to do it again, process first.
Yeah.
And I love that. One of the things that I've started encouraging people to do, because it's really hard sometimes to put processes together, but one of the things that I've started encouraging them to do is as they hire, start to build those processes together, right? Because that person may or may not stay with you. You don't know.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that they can't help you build that process. Yeah. What's your take on people having input on the processes that they're involved in?
Well, I think it's very important that they, as you're creating the processes, that's literally what we did. So I had everybody in the office. I mean, my technicians in the field, they kind of knew what they were doing, but everybody in the office, I would have them take the recipe cards, and on one side they'd write what they did every single day, and then on the other side they'd write what they did every week. And so that right there is selling the processes. So for me, I was doing it out of like necessity. Like if you're not there, I need to know what I need to do. So that was a necessity. But now I'm looking back, it's like, wow, that actually helped us really create our processes and our systems for what needs to be done and what we need to take off some people's plates or add to.
I love that. And you called it a recipe?
You know the 3x5 cards?
I do.
I call it a recipe card.
Index cards. Okay.
Yeah, the index card.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
I'm a mom first,
Hey, that's good.
I don't cook, but I know what a recipe card is.
I know what it is, but I don't cook. Okay. More of a serious question. You're a woman in a male-dominated industry, and you've had to deal with things that most men will never have to deal with. What do you think the hardest part has been of you growing this business to where it's at, but being a woman?
Wow. I didn't know anybody noticed. No, it's definitely been a struggle, and it's one of those things that I would always be like, oh, this is a weakness. It's a weakness because I'm not out in the field, and I don't actually work on garage doors. And so I'm like, well, how can I contribute? It turns out it was my strength, because what I can contribute is I can grow the company, and I can set up the processes, and I can set up the systems, and I can make sure that I'm filling these holes whenever there's a problem or a cog in our operations. I can fill that. So I would say that one of the hardest things was just overcoming my own mindset.
Wow. If you're watching or listening, you want to rewind it and play that part again, right? Like she said it multiple times, right? It's not about the type of business you're in. It's not the field. It's not the environment. It's not the economy. It's not politics. It's 100% you, right? And you talked about leadership. Well, yes, leadership is one aspect of it, but you've had to overcome different aspects of it, right? And it's the belief that you can actually get it done, that you can actually do it. And I think that's the biggest thing that holds people back, right? People are like, well, what do you do? Well, I teach contractors how to grow. But the truth is you can go to YouTube and watch all the videos that you would ever need to watch to grow your business.
100%.
So what's the difference, right? And the difference is that belief.
Yeah.
So I love that. Now, more specifically, what would you say to women right now? Because I actually work with quite a few women that are in the industry. What would you say to women who are struggling with either opening doors or finding the right people or believing that they can make it happen?
Well, I would say, you get to invest in you, invest in you, and take those whatever challenges come up, look at them, and kind of address those. But investing in you and knowing that, like, I guess it's your confidence level that you can go out and just do it, and nothing's holding you back. So I would just tell them to, like, invest in themselves.
Love that.
So get those mentors that you need that encourage you and that aren't holding you back or giving you excuses.
Little accountability.
Yeah, a lot of accountability.
Yeah. It's interesting. I look back at my life, not that I'm old and retired, but I look back at my life and I say the periods that I experienced the greatest amount of growth, I always had somebody there pushing me, right? A coach, a mentor, a trainer, a whatever, but I always had that external force pushing me because man or woman, sometimes we get stuck in our own head thinking like, oh, well, I'll never be able to because of where I grew up, how I grew up, my environment surrounding me, the type of industry that I have, right? So I love the fact that you've been able to turn that around and turn it into, this successful business that you've been running for so many years.
Thank you.
All right. I kind of want to wrap things up, right? We've talked about some biggest lessons that you've had. We've talked about, where you're at right now. Two questions. The first one, where do you see this business going? Where do you want to take this thing?
$1.5 billion.
That's with a B, if you're listening right now, not an M, a B, 1.5 billion.
Yeah.
And how are you going to do that?
So we joined a group. So it's PE group, Guild, Garage Group. And the amazing thing about Guild is the whole foundation, the whole creation of the company is based on relationships first. And so that just tied right in with my company because that is part of our values too. So they created this platform so we can come in and grow with these other garage door companies. And so I've got other garage door brands that are my partners all across the nation. And we call and talk about best practices. We get you're getting discounts on things that you buy in bulk, and you kind of have power in numbers. But we're also, we went up to Idaho to help one of our sister companies, and just us showing up and just we do this and we do this. They could take it or leave it. Well, they were like, oh yeah, we want to implement that. And they've turned around. They've just had their best year ever. They're just not far behind us. And from where they came to where they are now it's mind blowing. So I know that the same thing goes for any of the companies that are in Guild.
I love that. And you kind of speak to another underlying theme there, right? It's put yourself in an environment with people who want to see you win.
Yeah.
It gets lonely sometimes being the owner,
so
right?
lonely.
And you're like, nobody gets it. It's the weekend, I'm working. It's night, I'm working. It's early morning, I'm working, right? And everybody else is out partying or they're out, vacationing or whatever, and you're working. There are other owners who want what you want.
Yep.
Find them.
Yep.
Right? For you guys, you're able to find them specifically in the garage door industry, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Right? But that's one of the things that I always encourage people to do is hey, networking is one thing, but networking is not what this is, right? This is finding people who want to win like you want to win. Like you said, sharing best practices, hey, don't do this because that's what we did. Try this instead. In fact, you and I, before we started, we were talking about AI, right? Hey, we're using this program. Oh, well, I tried this one and now we're exchanging notes, right? Because for me, it's the same thing. It's like a rising tide, raises all ships. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. I always ask everybody this question. You're starting over. No money, no employees, no trucks, no building, nothing. It's you and the skills that you've acquired and $1,000. What are you doing with that $1,000?
Ooh, I'm going to go find somebody that's going to jump on board with my dream. And then we're going to go and create something amazing. Because for me, again, my skill is connecting people. My skill is going out and finding that person and going, you're going to be amazing at this. Let's put you in this position. So seeing their genius in them is what I can do really well.
Wow. I love that. You're the first person to say, get a person. So that's interesting. I love it. Well, Carrie, again, thank you for being on the show today. I love everything that you shared. I love where your company's going. I love what it is right now, obviously. If somebody has questions or they want to get a hold of you or they want to tour your shop, which you should, how would you recommend that they get a hold of you?
You can find me on LinkedIn and on Facebook.
Awesome. And we'll have the information down below in the description so you guys can look it up and make it a little easier for you. But again, thank you for being on the show. But listen, remember, the growth of your business, as much as you want to depend on other people or processes or things, ultimately always falls back on you. So if your business is struggling right now, the first place you got to look is in the mirror. All right. You know what time it is. It's time to get after it. 3, 2, 1. Off you go. Thanks for listening to the Success Unleashed podcast. Before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast by liking, subscribing, and leaving us a review. Until we see you again, it's time to get after it. 3, 2, 1, off you go.